What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're right at 100,000. Pretty crazy. I'm just going to push it right over the edge. Let's do it. Make sure you hit that notification bell too. Just get notified whenever we put up new videos that will help you make better decisions in this incredible time we live in. Wow. What a difference a day makes, isn't it? 24 hours, whatever you want to call it. We have a little bit of a nice bounce coming through. So what we're going to talk about today is what we're seeing on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. All right. I think it's always important to start with the big guns, the ones that I think are solid long term. Look at what's going on in the overall market, some trends, some happenings, some things that you can look at, things to think about, what I'm doing, a little bit about altcoins and exchanges and things like that. Couple things to think about the Olympics, about macro, and then finally, an article I saw, just something that I think will be helpful around the Forbes publishing their first crypto rich list, which I think is just something to keep in mind, something I think you guys will that's maybe helpful for people out there. All right, let's just dive in here. So we have been looking at this chart. We've been watching this unfold for a couple weeks now. And we have, I guess I would consider it not necessarily good news, but positive news. And I think it's really important also. The same way that when you look at volume, you can see on this chart, there's no colors. It's just raw size. And similarly, many good traders will take colors out of the chart itself, which is a really good way to remove yourself from a psychological standpoint, so that everything is just black or gray or whatever you want to call it. The reason why you want to do that is because when you start thinking that going up is good and going down is bad, that's a precursor to a lot of bad decisions. That's emotional. That's how you get tied to things. So I think just kind of like I just slipped up a minute ago, the more you can just say, this is just what happened, and here's what I could do next, and here's my plan, and here's what I will do whenever this happens, the more you can just get into a strategic reactive mode, or I guess not really reactive, but you have a plan, whatever you call that. That's really the way you want to do it, as opposed to being like, oh yeah, we're going up, this is sick, and then oh no, we're going down, I'm screwed, my life is over. So just things like that, just the words you use, the way you think about it. Up isn't necessarily good, down isn't necessarily bad. Those things add up in your subconscious. So a few pieces of news, I should say, as I correct myself, right? I mean, same stuff happens to me. Look at this. Look at the volume. So I've been talking a lot about how volume is really what I've been watching. And on the daily chart, at least on Bitcoin, I'm going to take this off of auto for a second so that I can make this a little bit easier to see. The daily volume from yesterday, yesterday, or last daily candle, I should say, was the highest in recent history. Now, if you scroll back all the way back, there's some higher volume levels, but things were different with less exchanges and the way that it was working. So this shows some serious support at this 6,000 level. So I think that's the first piece of news that is interesting, is that many people, they overlay the chart of this thing completely going down to zero. And let me be clear, that could happen. There's no certainties. There's no guarantees in any market, especially not in crypto. So don't think that it's all, puppies and ice cream here. That being said, this was surprising, I think, to myself and to a lot of people. I did not expect to see this kind of support, this kind of volume so quickly. I thought it would be more spread out and we might see a slowdown, but I wasn't seeing a bounce back. Now, what that means is that we're seeing an uptick, but this thing dropped so fast, right? This chart dropped so quickly that we were bound to have some bounce in some way. I personally, this is my own opinion, I don't see how it can necessarily do the V straight up thing. I could be completely wrong. And if I'm wrong, we're all going to make a lot of money really quickly. But I personally think that we're going to see either come down a little bit more, or at the very least, it's going to have to consolidate sideways for a little while. I don't know how it's going to get the momentum back to make the push to, let's say, 30, 40, 50,000 for Bitcoin at least, without some sideways action. Even if it bounces up for now, I think that it may have to do, a more gradual slope, but that, charts typically don't work that way. They either go straight up to create more of a parabolic, a larger parabolic move, or they consolidate so they can get the next huge parabola. This, again, guys, this is my own opinion. This is not pro advice. I'm just trying to, this is just what I'm seeing. So the bottom line is the volume is huge, bigger than I think anyone thought. So we saw a pretty big stop. We're going to see what happens next, but I think this area between, let's say, 7,600 and 10,000, maybe a little bit higher than 10,000, maybe like 10,500. I think that's going to be a consolidation zone, right? And I think that we're going to need it so that this chart can really work itself out. Now, if Bitcoin wasn't what it was, if it didn't have the brand and the community and even the whales behind it, and I looked at this chart, I would look at altcoins from this past year as a very good example, where we're halfway down in the drawdown, and that it's going to go all the way down to like $2,000. I'm not saying it will, but if I didn't know anything about the fundamental analysis of this, right, I would say this has a long way to go. But based on this volume, that gives me some reason to think we could be going more sideways than down in the near-term future. So what am I doing? Well, I talked about having confirmation before I really did anything. So this candle closed, but yesterday's candle closed, but it wasn't a huge engulfing candle. So that's one piece of data. We're waiting for this candle to close. I don't know. I'm not sold yet personally, and I'm probably a little more conservative than many people out there. But that's just where I'm coming from, especially when we see such volume going through the altcoins, which we'll talk about in a minute. So when it comes to Bitcoin, lots of volume. There's still something that needs to get worked out, and I'm not entirely sure how that chart's going to work it out, but it's slowed down, right? The drop has slowed. Now, conversely, we flip over to Litecoin, and Litecoin, in my opinion, this is a better looking chart than Bitcoin is right now, because I think that from a chart integrity standpoint, we've worked out the real big issues that were essentially between 99 and 125, give or take, right? This bar, at least in the daily, you can drill in and get more minutia or whatever. But this looks like it has a much better possibility to swing down, maybe hit this drawdown area, and then make a huge power move. This looks more promising to me than Bitcoin does. And especially when you look at the fundamentals of Litecoin and the flexibility of Litecoin and the brand of Litecoin, right? It being a payment system, that gets interesting in my personal opinion. So I had a lot of bids on Bitcoin because that's kind of the default. That's the place you go to buy to begin with because it gives you more flexibility. I am moving a lot of my bids over to Litecoin because of the way that the chart looks. And I just think that it's going to pop. It just looks more predictable. The USD chart, at least, it looks better to me than Bitcoin does. Other people might not agree with me, whatever. So we're going to watch this. I think that there's still some sideways action to go on this, right? Like any good chart would do, but then we'll go from there. Now, Ethereum is the other big one. And Ethereum is really holding its strength. And if you guys don't know or haven't been paying attention, Ethereum has gotten a lot of really good publicity lately from a very large part of the community. A lot of people, especially out here in San Francisco, seem to be pretty bullish on Ethereum from a growth standpoint. And because, apps are built on Ethereum and Bitcoin, while it can have a lot of these protocol or the app layers, especially as things like Rootstock, Lightning come out, Ethereum just seems to have more momentum right now. And so this, drawdown to 61 level is less severe than something like Litecoin. And it also seems to be having more of a longer term consolidation. Like this whole thing could be considered a sideways action if you really zoomed out and looked at maybe a 2 or 3 year window. Like I'm talking as if we were looking back on this in 2 years. So Ethereum has a lot of juice. It has a lot of ICOs still being built on it. It has a lot of activity. It's going to be interesting what happens when they switch over to Casper and what they're going to do about sharding and all that. But purely from just fundamental and technical, it's looking pretty good. So if all these three, Bitcoin, and I love Bitcoin. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. If from my perspective, as somebody who is looking for what's going to bounce, what's going to get me potentially the highest ROI, and I have no idea if that's going to happen, I think Litecoin and Ethereum are maybe better bets than Bitcoin right now. But Bitcoin's more of an indicator of what's going on in the market. So take that for what it's worth. I would encourage you guys to do your own research and make your own conclusions, because none of this is pro advice. Gotta say that. That's what I'm looking at. Now, the other really interesting story, in my opinion, is something else we've talked about with the market cap. And this is a really important macro concept. Crypto is unique as of now, I should say, as of this past year, more than any other year. Money that goes into crypto tends not to leave. It just goes on the sidelines, meaning when people sold their crypto for fiat or Tether or whatever, they didn't take it and say, okay, well, I'm deallocating out of crypto and I'm increasing my allocation over in stocks or bonds or gold or real estate or whatever the other allocation is. For the most part, the market cap, the money just went and sat in fiat waiting to buy back in a cheaper price. And the reason why is because we saw almost $100 billion leave and come back in 48 to 72 hours, give or take. Right? I mean, we were doing a video and or over the weekend, I think it was like 280 billion, something like that. Now it's 381. This is a really, really important point, meaning a lot of these price actions, a lot of the price, especially in altcoins, is the same people who are selling are the same people who are buying back in, not necessarily profitably, but that's so different than a traditional market where people are selling and then maybe you get some new buyers to come in and buy into that asset class because now it's undervalued. Do you see what I'm saying? So like when you look at portfolio theory, especially for someone like a hedge fund or even a private equity fund to a certain extent, you look at uncorrelated asset classes. And when one asset class drops a lot, you often allocate more funds into that asset class because maybe it's a growth asset class or it's primed for higher growth than something else that may be overvalued. And you constantly are reallocating. Now, this is when you have lots of money, and the crypto obviously is way too volatile and not big enough to handle big amounts of money. But because of that, money doesn't move necessarily between the two. As far as I can tell, I think money just goes on the sidelines and waits to buy back in. And so you see that on the market cap, the speed of the market cap. I mean, that's crazy that like 30% of the market cap can come back in 2 days. Like that wouldn't be able to happen unless the money was right there, readily available, right? Even with, Tether printing money or whatever theories there are out there, that speed wouldn't be feasible. And the other thing to look at is altcoins. And if you go to Binance. If you don't have a Binance account, go get one. Go to coinmastery.com/Binance. It's my referral link. You can get a free account, whatever. And look at some of the coins. Like this is a good time when you can do a 24-hour what's pumping and what's not, right? Because it gives you an insight into trends. Now, top list, Bluezell, ICO, very hyped ICO a couple months ago, hit Binance a few days ago, or I guess yesterday or 2 days ago maybe, and it's just pumping. So this one's kind of an outlier, right? But I think Icon, where is Icon? Icon's a good example because it dumped a lot. When I say dump, I mean, it went down a lot, and then it was like one of the biggest ones to go down, and then it was also one of the biggest ones to go up, meaning that the swing was one of the highest swings. Usually, this is broadly speaking, usually when that happens, it's the same people who are selling it are the ones that are buying it back. And that's why you get the huge swings on some of these altcoins that are really popular. So whenever you look at some of the coins that have a relatively large market cap, but they get the huge swings, it usually has a very strong community of people around it who are new to investing, who have not done this and don't necessarily believe in their beliefs are tested when the market goes down. So they sell and they're like, all right, well, I'm just going to take my profits because, I got lucky or whatever. But then when they see it coming back up, they're like, oh, well, that's the one I'm going to buy. 2 or 3 months ago, we talked a lot about how people tend to buy the same coins over and over. You don't see people who, on average, they don't go out and buy new stuff all the time. They research a basket and then they kind of live in that basket. That's typically how it works in crypto. And that's one big thing that I saw with something like Icon. And that just feeds into this theory. Again, I don't think I can't necessarily prove it. I mean, maybe you could prove this if you really got into the weeds, but this is a seemingly pretty good theory that money is just waiting on the sidelines. Same with altcoins, is that it's just people who sold are buying it back. Similarly, when they sell a gun, they're going to buy, and so for long-term growth, long-term support, we do need new money to come in, but a lot of this sell-off will be supported by the exact same people that sold. They're just going to be buying back at lower prices, and guess what? That's what happens. That's what markets do. Now, fewer people have way more money, and a lot of people have a lot less money. I mean, that's what markets do, right? So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at these price increases, these price actions, is where's the money flowing? That's always the name of the game in anything when you're looking at price action in markets. It's where is the money coming from? Where's it going? Crypto, I think it's just, it's a little bit of it's a group think, right? It's an echo chamber. Now let's talk about some macro stuff. The 2018 Olympics, which will be in South Korea, kicking off in, I believe tomorrow, Thursday, I think are the opening ceremonies. If not Thursday, definitely Friday. I think tomorrow actually may be like figure skating and Friday is the opening ceremonies or something. This is something to keep in mind. Now, I didn't really think about this. Somebody was talking about this and I was like, yeah. But then I realized that there's some, the vice president of the United States is going here and he's made some comments about the Olympic Games, specifically around North Korea's involvement in the Olympics and also the proximity, obviously being right next door to South Korea. And there's just there's more geopolitical tension than I first thought there was. And so this may be a non-event, no pun intended. It just nothing may come of this. But from a global macro standpoint, this is a very interesting potential conspiracy theory if any sort of government or economy was trying to make a statement or a move, this is a very good time when a lot of people all over the world are watching one thing. Now, I'm not saying something bad's going to happen or something good's going to happen. I just think that this is worth keeping an eye on as a piece of news, especially as we're seeing volatility in the stock market, we're seeing volatility in crypto. There's semblances of volatility, of uncertainty being thrown around everywhere across the capital markets. And so stuff like this, you just never know. And I think that you always want to look for what's the big macro event that the world is watching whether it be an election, whether it be a huge meeting, whether it be the Olympics, whether it be anything. It's always good to keep this stuff in mind as you're making informed decisions, as you are looking for why is this happening, whatever, right? So I have no idea what's going to happen. I just know that there's some geopolitical, pressure or friction, I guess, that may be highlighted at the Olympics. That often translates into the prices overall over the economy this day and age. Now, last thing I wanted to mention is I saw the guy from Binance, the CEO from Binance was on here. Forbes publishes the first ever richest people in cryptocurrency. Right? Have you guys ever seen like top 50 richest billionaires or people in the world or whatever? I don't know what the list is. I don't really follow stuff. But they did this thing where it's the richest people in cryptocurrency. And this brings up a point that I would encourage everybody to think about. And I think everybody listening to this, everybody watching this, we are all in different stages of how much fiat or crypto you own. And that's great. There's plenty of people watching this that make a ton of money. And there's also people watching this or just like, or listening to this that are just getting started. It's one thing if people know that you have made a lot of money in you have a very high paying job or whatever, or maybe you started a business or maybe you inherited it. I don't know. It's one thing when people know that you have money. There's a certain set of risks, but there's also this understanding that typically it's very hard to access that money, whether because it's illiquid, whether because there's some level of institutional security around it, whatever. With crypto, there is a whole host of operational security, what they call OPSEC, that is required if you end up doing really well in crypto. It's not a good idea, in my opinion, to talk about how much you're making or how well you're doing or bragging about it. This is not a world that is a good place to be talking about your particular success in crypto. I think it's really good to share with other people and make sure they get in. But when you start getting into, hey, this is what I've done, or this is how much money I've made in cryptocurrency, it's a really risky thing to do. And I would encourage anybody, I don't know how much money you guys have, who's made what or anything like that. That's one of the reasons why I think it's important not to talk about price or what you own or how much you're buying or anything like that in a public forum. I think it's keeping that stuff close to your chest is really, really important for a variety of reasons. And then on the other side, the security side, I think that's a whole different discussion, something I've talked about at length. Protect yourself, put your wallets all over the place, safe deposit boxes, mail it to different, make sure that you are protected in that sense. But it's tempting if you have never made money before to, not even crypto, just in general, to brag about it, or not even brag about it, that's a bad word, to talk about it because it's something you're proud of, right? As it's like achievement. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that there are risks that come with that in cryptocurrency. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because I know we live in a clickbait culture. I know that there's a lot of people who listen to this or watching this that are maybe younger, this may be one of the first times you ever experience money. Or if you haven't yet, maybe you will in the next couple of years if this thing keeps going the way I think it's going to go. Practice and learn how to be it's not even about humility. It's just keep it cool about what your assets are, about what you own, how much you own, especially if you're, at going to meetups or you're, online or whatever. It's tempting because people will think you're like, oh, that's so sick. You've made so much. Oh, that's so. it's not worth it. Keep it chill. Talk about, the things you like. Think about like the tech, whatever. So anyway, this is kind of like a public service announcement because I do think that crypto is just different in that sense. You want to be smart about it. You want to be, and this is going to happen to a lot of people. A lot of you watching will make a lot of money at some point. That's my best guess. And, you don't want to have a target on your back. So, just my opinion. Who knows, do what you want, right? Who cares? Cool. That being said, exciting times. Again, just as a final wrap up, what I'm doing, really focus on Litecoin, a little bit on Ethereum, but mostly on Litecoin from a buying standpoint right now. Not totally convinced on this confirmation. I want one more daily candle. I may start layering in some low bids, see what I can pick up, kind of like what I did on Bitcoin, but not going big on anything quite yet because I'm not really concerned about catching the bottom. I just want to make sure that I don't buy and then watch it keep going down. And so we just need more volume. We need more confirmations, things like that. All right. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, guys. Let's get over 6 figures. Let's do this. I want to get that 100,000 subscribers and epic times. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later. Peace out.